cuttings, pelargonium cuttings. I'm going to do a short piece now on how to take them and what to take them in. So this is a module tray. This is the sort of thing that we use here at Fibrex for taking our cuttings into. But you're not likely to have these at home, so we will concentrate on the sorts of pots and compost that you can use at home. You're more likely to take your cuttings into this sort of thing. It's either a 5-inch or a 3.5-inch pot here. And the sort of compost that you want to use is a nice seed compost, very low level nutrients, nice easy compost for the roots to actually develop in. And what we do is we add a little bit of loam, so a John Innes #1 sort of thing, with some grit, horticultural grit, perlite, vermiculite, anything like that, just to aid drainage. It's a nice soft mix, but very free draining. So that's your cuttings mix. And what you want to do with your cuttings mix is you want to fill your pot nicely and firm it down there. And you're going to give that a really good soak then, so that it's saturated and the water will sort of ooze up between your fingers when you press the compost down. Put that to one side, and then we're going to take our cuttings today from a dwarf pelargonium. This is Friesdorf, hasn't yet been prepared for its winter holidays, this one, but it doesn't really matter what kind of pelargonium you're taking your cuttings from. Certainly your zonal types, which are the most common. It can be a dwarf, a miniature, a basic, or a stella. You're going to take about 50% of the plant off now before you clean it up. So that's going to be your cutting material. And the general rule of thumb, as I say, is about 50% of a stem. And you want to remember to always cut immediately above, when you're cutting off the parent plant, you want to cut immediately above a leaf joint, which will make a nice clean cut, and that will seal off nicely and hopefully stop any dieback. If you cut sort of midway or below a leaf joint, then you'll tend to find that that's where the rot starts to set in. So as I said, immediately above a leaf joint. And then we're going to sort of cut that right back all over, and those will be our cuttings that we'll clean up. We then strip off all of the leaves. We've done it before, we've shown you. So you gradually start taking all of the leaves and the flowers, any mucky bits and pieces off, until you end up with a little plant that looks like a bundle of stems like this. And it's just basically to reduce the need for watering through the winter months, especially if you're keeping them quite cool. And it allows decent airflow. It also means that you can pack them in nice and tight to each other, so it's a great sort of space-saving technique. Obviously, if you've got something that's looking absolutely gorgeous, like this coloured leaf here, this is Old Shield, then there's no need, really. If you've got a nice, warm, sunny windowsill in the house and you're quite happy to keep feeding it, then the little darling's going to just carry on flowering for you for quite a while yet. So there's absolutely no need. Maybe just sort of pick off the odd dirty leaf that's in there, but apart from that, really and truly, it's quite nice to just carry on enjoying those flowers for as long as you possibly can. In the meantime, you've got your cutting material, and what you want to do now with that is to literally strip off any leaves, just leaving the growing tip. So that's your cutting. Now when you've taken it off the plant, you cut above a leaf joint, but for your cutting you actually want to tidy the bottom up and cut below the leaf joint, all right, because that's where the plant is going to root from. And if there's too much sort of internodal plant growth there, then that's just, again, it just gives it a reason to rot and die back. So really and truly, just cutting nice and neatly below the leaf joint. And once you've got a lovely bundle of those, like these guys here, you can either leave those alone now to dry for an hour or so, let the bottoms callus off, or you can, providing the material is reasonably firm, just strike them straight in to your cuttings mix. And something else to remember is that cuttings don't like being little lonesome babies, so they prefer company. So sticking one in the middle of the pot just by itself isn't going to do it any good. You really want to sort of arrange them nicely around the edge of the pot here, and remember that the cuttings will root. They're quite happy if the sides touch the, you know, if they're touching the side of the pot. But if you cut them too long and they touch the bottom of the pot, they're not going to root. So really you don't want to make your cuttings any more than a couple of inches. All right. Now, when they're at this stage, they're sat in there, they've got nice wet compost. You're not going to need to water that compost again for probably anything up to a week. You really want to let that compost dry out before it gets any more water. And you're going to get a much, much better root on these, much faster and a better percentage of sort of strike rate if you give them a little bit of bottom heat at this time of year. So if you've got a nice little propagator that you can sit them on, then that's great. But don't cover them up because they don't like a high humidity. Okay, so sit them on something nice and warm. Give them a drink once that compost dries out, preferably on a sunny day, because it really does make a difference. Otherwise, let well alone, out of direct sunlight. Happy little cuttings.